everybody for coming this evening, and tonight we're going to have a training on leadership development. There's some new faces in the room, so I hope you've gotten acquainted with some of your neighbors in the area. And my name is Lynette Diaz. I'm the neighborhood liaison, and I help neighborhood councils in the city of Missoula basically organize themselves. Tonight's training is going to be offered by Pat Murphy, so you don't have to listen to me, and I get to hang out with you guys in the crowd. Pat has over 20 years of training in leadership and the Myers-Briggs personality types. She holds an MA in Communication Studies from the University of Montana. She recently retired from the university where she was the director of the Center for Leadership Development at the University Center. And currently Pat is a statewide trainer for the Vista AmeriCorps program and works with individual businesses to promote clear communication and understanding among employees. When she isn't training, you can find her quilting, gardening, and traveling with her husband, Bill. So everybody welcome Pat Murphy.
Hi, everyone. Tonight I'm trying to be an electronic expert, which is not my forte, so hopefully this is all going to end up working out. I hate when this happens. So how is everybody tonight? Welcome, and it's really great that you can be here at 6 o'clock on a work night. That really shows that you really have a lot of commitment for what you're doing. And so I really congratulate you for getting involved in your neighborhood councils. I think this is really important work that you're all doing. And it's, a fairly new concept in Missoula, and I think it's so important because every neighborhood has a unique set of needs and interests, and it's so important that you can get out there and speak for your neighborhood at the city council and really get involved in trying to come up with some solutions. So congratulations. One of the things that I didn't tell Lynette to put into my bio was the fact that I was a 4-H county extension agent in Missoula back in the early century, part of the century, for 3 years. So I have a lot of experience working with volunteers. And I know, just as some of you, it's just such an exciting thing to do because you're thrust in with all these people with all these great ideas and talents and interests, and some people have strengths and weaknesses that you can work with, and some it's more challenging. And so how do you manage to do that? And so tonight we're going to look at that. How can you, as a leader in your council, because I'm just considering all of you leaders in your councils because you're here tonight in this room. How are you as a leader going to work with those individuals with the different abilities and talents and commitments and that sort of thing? So we're going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about that, and hopefully by the end of the night you're going to come away with... Oh, Lynette? Yeah, help me move this. I'm sorry. I wanted to move this closer to the audience. There, can everybody see that? So tonight we're going to look at several things, and I think we're going to have an exciting, fun time tonight. First of all, we're going to get to know each other a little bit better. How many of you are kind of new to councils and this is your first time attending an event? A few of you. Okay, great. Well, it's so important that you not only get to know the people in your own neighborhood council, but you get to know people all over the city, because when you go home tonight and next week you might have some issue that comes up, or you have, gee, I wonder what I should do about this, you're going to meet these people tonight that you can call and ask their advice. So it's so important for you guys to develop a network of folks that you can visit with and talk to about your concerns and your ideas and that sort of thing. You're also going to learn your individual leadership style and ways to work with different styles. Because your style is great, but there's lots of other styles out there too. And how can we work with those styles so we can come up with the best decision and solution to the problem? We're going to dispel stereotypes of communication styles and leadership styles. Because oftentimes we can pigeonhole people or peg them into a certain category. And we don't want to do that because there's a lot of strengths to doing that, but there's also some disadvantages. So we're going to look at that too. And we're going to learn how to adapt your leadership style to work with others. This is so important to say, okay, well, this is my preference, this is my strength, But this other person sees things a little bit differently, and how can I approach that person and work with that person so that we both turn out successful in what we're doing. And finally, we're going to have fun tonight. I hope you're ready to have fun. My workshops don't allow you to sit in a seat all night, so don't get too comfortable. You're going to be moved around real soon. And you'll get to meet and work with everybody in the room tonight. Anything else that you would like to learn tonight, or you have questions about leadership that you'd like us to address? No? Okay. Well, in order for us to be successful, I think it's always important to set some ground rules. You know, how do we want to conduct ourselves to get the most out of this evening, as far as just being respectful to others, or you know, being committed or whatever. So I'd like us to just come up with a list of things that we would agree to tonight to kind of set some ground rules. Does anybody have anything in particular they'd like to have on the list?
Listen while others are talking.
Okay, great. Listening. This is a great way to practice your leadership skills, because this is probably the most important thing you can be as a leader, is to be a good listener. Okay, great, thank you. Another one.
Open-minded.
Being open-minded, very good.
Having one conversation at a time so everybody can hear each other.
Okay, great. One conversation at a time. And I'm assuming that's in the big groups, because we'll be getting in smaller groups where there'll probably be more going on. But okay, good. One conversation at a time.
Giving everybody a chance to speak.
Okay, great. Making sure everyone's voice is heard. Okay. Also another important skill of a leader. Anything else? I would like to add a couple. One of them is confidentiality. I don't know if anything will happen tonight that is confidential in nature, but I would hope that we could all agree that what we say in this room stays in this room, and that kind of opens it up to more, you know, open conversations about real problems and issues that you're facing. And then the other one, which, and I just remembered I haven't done this yet, turn off your cell phones unless you're expecting some important calls. I'm sure that I forgot to turn mine off. Anything else you want to add to this? Okay. So can everybody agree that this would be a good set of ground rules for tonight? Okay, wonderful. Well, the first thing I want to do is just give you a little test just to see what your potential for leadership might be, okay? So you don't need to write anything down. You're not going to be graded on this, but just think in your head, and if you know the answer, just spout it out, okay? So the first question that I have is, how do you put a giraffe in a refrigerator? You don't? You don't.
Get a really big fridge.
Get a really big fridge. You're close.
Get a stuffed giraffe.
You get a stuffed giraffe. That might work. Well, the correct answer is open the refrigerator, put the giraffe in, and close the door. This question tests whether you tend to do simple things in an overly complicated way. Okay. The second question is, how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator?
Take the wrap out.
Oh, who said that?
Good.
Very good. This tests whether you tend to do simple things. Oh, I'm sorry. This tests your ability to think through the repercussions of your previous actions. Okay, so got that one right. Okay, the Lion King is hosting an animal conference. All the animals attend except one. Which animal does not attend? The Lion King is holding a conference, an animal conference. One animal doesn't attend. Which one?
Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens?
Yeah.
The ostrich?
Ostrich? Okay. Well, the correct answer is the elephant! He's in the refrigerator, remember? question tests your memory, okay? Okay, so there is a river, and you must cross the river, and it's used by crocodiles. You do not have a boat. How do you manage it?
Get the old one.
There's a river, you must cross it, but it's used by the crocodiles. You do not have a boat. How do you manage to get across the river? Huh? Find a bridge. You swim across because all the crocodiles are at the animal convention. Okay? So this tests if you've been listening or not. Okay, so according to Anderson Consulting, which is an international consulting firm, 90% of the professionals that they tested got all the answers wrong. And when they tested preschoolers, many of them got several answers right. So what does that tell you?
You have to think out of the box.
Out of the box, that's right. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is a groundbreaker, just to get us to know each other better. And I would like us to mix up. I want you to sit with people that you don't know, that are in different neighborhoods than you. Just kind of mix up. So just get up and kind of, you can spread the tables out a little bit. And real quickly. Meet some folks you don't know and introduce yourselves.
Go around and then come back and forth, they might take it. I just figured I'd go over there, you go over here, and just yeah, you can't go
Everybody found some folks to work with? What I'd like you to do now, is to come up with a list of things you have in common with each other. And I don't want you to do things that are obvious, like, oh, we all wear glasses or we all have brown hair, but come up with a list of things you have in common. That's not quite so obvious. I'll just give you a few minutes to do that. The group that comes up with yes, and all have common. I'm wondering, did any group have more than 5 things in common? More than 5? How about 4? Anybody have 4? What? Okay, could you read off your list of what you had in common? Oh, you didn't? You had 6. You had 6? Oh, what are they?
We got 5.
You got 5. Okay. So could you read off your 5 things in common?
We have common interest in concern about neighborhoods. We have a mutual interest in our community as a whole. That includes our neighborhoods and that safety and welfare of the citizens. We all like birds. We've all lived in Missoula for 4 years or more.
Great. Nice list. And who had 5?
Right here.
What was yours?
Okay. We're all Missoulians. We're all high school graduates. We all love Missoula. We love the mountains, and we care about our neighborhoods.
Great. Perfect. Okay, now the next task I would like you to do is a little harder. I want you to come up with one unique thing that each of you has that you can't share with anybody else. It might be something you could teach somebody else. It could be a special skill that you have that you could contribute to your neighborhood. So what unique thing do you have that nobody else at your table has? So welcome back. I'm sorry if you didn't have enough time to finish your unique thing. But basically I wanted to just really talk about why I asked you to do this activity. Why do you think I picked this particular icebreaker for this group?
It's interrelationships so that we get to know one another,
Okay,
you know.
Yeah.
And if you continue the communication, then you'll bond with the people that you're with. And sometimes you find common interests and
Right.
will help you with whatever you're going to do.
exactly. Okay, that's one very good reason. Yeah, another one.
I think another reason is just to demonstrate that it might look like we're about different things, but we can see clearly that we actually share some really important things in common, and that
Yes.
kind of breaks down some boundaries.
Definitely, definitely. Other reasons I ask you to do this. Did any of you find some really unique things out about other people?
Yeah.
What was some creative or unique things? Anybody can name one? Yeah.
Randy says he has a US patent.
Oh, wow, great, a US patent, okay. Other things?
Melissa has a wood shop.
A wood shop. Great, great. Well, you know, if the more we talk to people and we find out that, wow, this person is pretty, rich and has a lot of really great experiences that we might be able to use. But how often do we ever really ask somebody? How often do we really sit down and ask somebody, well, what are your unique skills? What kinds of things could you bring to the table? What kinds of things could you help out the neighborhood council with? So I just hope that you can use this activity as a way to, if we really sit down and have a conversation with somebody, we can find out a lot that we have in common, as well as some really unique skills that they can bring and help us be successful. So what I'd like to do right now is our leadership style activity. Have any of you ever done like a leadership style personality assessment, anything like that? What have you done before? Myers-Briggs.
The Briggs.
The Myers-Briggs, anything else?
Keller test.
The Keller test?
I've done this one.
Yeah, this is actually, the one we're going to do was developed by a woman named Nicole Trimble, and she was a national VISTA leader, and I'm very involved with VISTA training in the state, and I find VISTA training to have a lot of rich, wonderful activities that you can do, and this is one of them. And I'm also a Myers-Briggs consultant, so I do a lot of Myers-Briggs, and I personally love doing leadership stuff. I think it's so fun, and people get so much out of it. They leave thinking, wow, I never thought of it in this way before. This is a new perspective. So I hope you all feel that way too. I want to first of all say that I don't want to try to pigeonhole people. I know some people feel uncomfortable doing these kinds of things because, we're trying to put somebody in a peg or say that they're this way. But I just want to assure you this is just one teeny piece of who you are as people. There's a million things that make us who we are. The neighborhood we grow up in, our families, our education, our life experiences, all those things contribute to who we are. So this is just one small piece, and you can kind of say it's one lens that we can look at ourselves through, but it certainly isn't all the lenses, but it's just one small piece. And these are generalities. I'm not saying that this is going to be you to a T, but in general, people gravitate to certain styles, and they have certain preferences for the way they like to do things. I really like doing this because it helps me understand who I am. It really helps me understand others and where they're coming from. And as far as personal relationships, my husband always says, you're the first person that ever understood my need to reflect and to journal and to go away by myself. And nobody's ever understood that before, but because I know about personality types, I realize that that's a need he has. So it really has helped me to understand others too. And also, there's no good or bad. Every personality style, every leadership style has good qualities as well as weaknesses. And so we have to kind of pull, here's my strengths, here's some areas that I could improve on. So we want to look at it from that perspective. And what do you think some other strengths, and now I'm seeing that this is in front of one of my book charts. What do you folks see as some strengths of doing leadership styles? I've talked about a few. Any strengths, any reasons that you think it's a good idea to do this?
Well, I think that within our leadership teams in our different neighborhood councils, we're definitely going to encounter people with very different styles. And
Yeah.
if we don't understand how to react to that or not, or how it relates to what we're doing, or what they want to do, I
Right.
think we could end up not being able to accomplish it.
Exactly. And if you can have an appreciation for different styles, different ways of looking at things, and bringing all those people together, because each of these types has a particular category that they're strong in, and bringing all these types together is going to help you develop a much better solution, more well-rounded, more well thought out. So just taking all those people's opinions into consideration is important. Other strengths is that, like I said, it helps you understand your approach to work. What are my strengths? You know, what's my strong suit in work, and where might I have some weaknesses? And realizing that, because
You can use these different styles also in marketing and your business too. And it helps you understand, like certain customers, if you know your style
Yeah.
and their style, then you're going to be able to communicate with them and use the things.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. We've already talked about it helps you work more effectively with others that you may not understand. And it helps me to modify my approach with someone if what I'm doing isn't working.
Amen.
So if you're not communicating with somebody, maybe it's not their fault. Maybe you need to think, how can I approach this in a different way? You know, maybe they're coming from a different angle. And we're gonna do some activities looking at that too. Well, there's also some weaknesses. What would be some of the weaknesses of doing leadership styles?
Stereotyping.
Stereotyping, yeah. Anything else you can think of?
You could use it as your crutch of, I'm this way, so I'm never gonna change.
Yeah. And that's definitely not what we're trying to get across tonight. It's that I'm this way, but I can adapt to another style too. So definitely. So like I said, it doesn't explain your culture, your history, your day-to-day moods. So like I said, it's one small piece of who we are. It won't account for all of an individual's behavior, because certainly there's things that are way beyond what leadership styles tell us. And finally, it should not replace having a conversation with somebody about their preferences, their attitudes, and their behaviors. So, you know, always say using this as maybe a way to begin a conversation is really a good way to approach it. So in your handouts, you do have a handout on the leadership compass. And what I'm going to do is just go around the room. And so you might want to just follow along with that. It's in the blue book. Because I apologize, the room's so big, some of our flip charts are going to be hard to read, so you can follow around. So let's start with north. North is, and oh, by the way, I want you to be thinking about which of the four directions you think you fall under. You're going to find a little bit of each of you in all the directions, but one of these is going to be more predominant, and you're going to say, yeah, I think I'm probably most, one of these. And then we're going to do some activities. So as I'm reading these, think about which one you think is probably your most preferred style. So the north are the get-it-done people. They're assertive, active, and decisive. They like to be in control and determine the course of events. They're quick to act. They want others to act quickly too. They enjoy a challenge. They think of the bottom line. They like quick pace and fast track. They're courageous, ambitious, and confident. They persevere and they're not stopped by the word no. They're goal-centered and ambitious. They're hardworking and they like to be in the front. And their value words are do it now or I'll do it. Anybody know one of those people? Yeah. Okay, let's go west. They provide planning and resources to others. They're careful, deliberate, and they follow procedures. They use data to make logical, analytical decisions. They weigh all sides and they're balanced. They're introspective and self-analytical. They're careful. They thoroughly examine people's needs and situations. They get the most out of what is done in the past. They're skilled at finding the fatal flaw in something. And their value words are objective and organized. Then we have the South. The South are the nurturers. They are friendly, likable, and team players. They allow others to feel important. They're supporting, nurturing, and caring. They're willing to trust others at face value. They're peace-loving and sympathetic and helpful. They're feeling-based. They trust their own emotions. They focus on the present moment. They're process-centered. They're generous, non-competitive, and they like to build on the ideas of other people. And their value words are right and fair. And then finally, we have the East. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, the East are the visionary people. They're innovative, creative, and they see the big picture. They're idea-oriented and they focus on the future. They have insight into the mission and the purpose of an organization or a cause. They're risk takers, and they're adventurous and they're spontaneous. They look for themes and ideas. They appreciate lots of information. They're unconventional and free-spirited. They like to experiment and explore. And their value words are option and possibility. So you can see how different all these leadership styles are. And they all add something of great value to any endeavor. So I would like you to think about which one of these leadership styles fits you the best, knowing that there's going to be some of each of you, each of these in you. And I want you to head toward the direction that you feel you fit into. So we should have 4 groups when we're finished.
Okay. She says we'll have the personality types and then
Yeah.
We only have 3 Souths, but that's okay.
We're nurturers.
Well, just based on what you know, what would happen if you had a group with just only one nurturer and no nurturers? What do you think would happen? Or how would that group react together? Any ideas?
They can mess around with each other.
They, what's a kind of one to this?
That's okay.
They console each other.
They console each other. The Souths do? The Souths do?
You say the nurturer.
Yeah, they are. Somebody else said it.
If there was only, you were saying if there's only one in a group of others, I've kind of read ahead a little bit, and one of the things was that they could be easily steamroller.
Uh-huh.
And I can kind of imagine that they're very feeling based, might easily feel put off by criticisms or
Okay. Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
On down the road, you might lose.
Yeah, that's true. If you don't have enough support for them. So what I'd like you to do in your group, I'm going to pass this out to you too so you can read it, but you are a group of neighborhood council people getting together to develop a neighborhood event to make your neighborhood council more visible in your neighborhood. Your goal is to attract diverse families and other people from your neighborhood. You want to reach all walks of life, including young families, elderly folks, anybody else in your neighborhood. You want full participation. So I want you to come up with a plan. I'm going to bring around flip flip chart paper and markers. So come up with a recorder, somebody who can record your activities, and somebody who can report back at the end. And just go ahead and plan something, and I'll bring these instructions around so you can read it if you have any questions. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes for this activity. If I could get everybody's attention, it sounds like everybody's had some great conversations, and I can feel excitement in the room. There's some great ideas out there.
Something like regular ID.
So what I'd like us to do, is all of us, hello, take our attention to the north. The north are the get it done people, and they were, of course, the first people that were finished. Because of that, I think we should let them present first. So why don't you guys tell us about your great idea?
Okay, we're going to hold a neighborhood yard sale / block party, so whatever. And we're going to make sure that when we hold the yard sale, that we're also going to couple that with the block party, which will be music, face painting. We're going to do a scavenger hunt where they have to find different information and then they can win prizes. Neighborhood council information and cakewalks and maybe a book exchange there as well, and have it all in one block in the neighborhood. The goal would be to raise money for either a neighborhood project, a neighborhood organization, or a school in the neighborhood. And we would want to have other neighborhood councils do the same thing on the same day, and then we could kind of compete and see who raises the most money for their cause. Good job. Okay. Well, you want to turn that down and read to us about how to work best with North. Present your case quickly, clearly, enthusiastically, and confidently. Let us know the payoff or the role. Focus on the challenge of the task. Give autonomy to us. Establish timelines and stick to them. Give positive public recognition. Use to complete tasks that require motivation and initiative, and use us to complete the tasks that require motivation and initiative, and show us the results.
Okay. Do you think does that fit with you? Do you see some things that seem to work?
Yeah.
Well, what do you notice about their presentation? Is there anything there that you notice? Pardon?
Very ambitious.
Very ambitious, yes, very ambitious. They're not only going to do it for them, but they want everybody to follow through too and have a little competition going here. Anything else you notice?
Do it now.
Yeah, they really did have a plan. I mean, it's a very well-developed plan, and they really got right to the task, and they got it done. So I see a lot of great ideas, very ambitious, and looking, not just doing one or two simple things, but they want to do a lot of things. So it's very complex and very involved. Okay. Okay, let's go to the west. Well, actually, I would like to, instead of go to the west, go to the south. Can we have the south present next, please?
Okay. We're just having a general neighborhood council meeting, and our point of the meeting is trying to just get more people involved. And so the first thing we talked about was just outreach and ways to do that. So we considered email and phones, newsletter, going door to door, reaching out to renters in the neighborhood as well as homeowners, using the outreach tool Facebook and MySpace is getting very popular, doing social events such as ice cream social. Yeah. And then also making sure that it's held at a convenient time for people, and then also to provide childcare for folks who have children. And then our thought process of bringing people in is just having that emotional response. So whether that's basically providing a hook, whether it's an environmental issue or traffic safety or housing concerns, things like that, to just bringing in that emotional hook. And then afterwards, providing an opportunity for people to give feedback, so doing surveys or making sure people have an opportunity to let them know if they didn't speak at the meeting that they could email us or something like that afterwards. And then outcome and goals, having commonality, integration of different city departments and also community members, so whether that's parks and recreation folks or other people. And then also being more active, having more active participation and people coming back in the future. So something that we thought about whenever we were doing this is that we didn't bring up our event, but we thought about how to reach out to people and make sure that they had a chance to give us their feedback and whatnot, so it kind of fits in with this all.
The school teacher kept saying, we have to have a goal.
Well, what do you see as a difference between the two presentations? What do you notice as differences?
They care a lot about how people feel and what their experience is when they're participating.
Yes, their whole approach was about the people. It's how do we reach out to the people? How do we make them feel involved? How do we get them involved? The whole thing is around the people part. So, what else do you notice?
We're just going to throw the party. We hope that people come.
Exactly. There was no forethought into how we're going to get the people there. It was just like, oh, isn't this a great event? It is a great event. But you notice how the South's really brought in another piece that's so important, and it's much richer now. Because if you put these two together, wow, what an awesome activity you would have. So that's great. Okay, so let's go to the West now and see what they came up with.
Do you want ways to work?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, let's look at ways to work with the South, please. Deb, you want to read that for us?
Remember process and relationships between people. Justify decisions around values. Listen, allow expression of feeling and intuition and logical arguments. Be aware they may have hard time saying no and can be easily steamrolled. Provide positive reassurance and likability. Let person know you like them and show an appreciation.
Okay, does that kind of fit for you guys a little bit? Okay, great. Wonderful, thank you. Did we clap for you guys? Good job. Okay, great. How about the West?
I guess I got affected. We went through, of course, we're one of the larger groups, so it took us a little while to get everybody's ideas out. And we discussed, the first things we discussed were how to get everybody's attention and get it to come out. And we talked about mailings, we talked about door-to-door, we talked about phone calls. Person said that their council has done a direct phone. Different members of the council, you collect phone numbers and call directly when you're going to have a meeting. So we discussed those. We decided we just kind of set up for a neighborhood social, so we kind of wrote our bulletin out to everyone. And it's going to be neighborhood social. We're going to have adult beverages, ice cream and potluck, games for all, including what one person came up with is address bingo, where you have to match addresses with the card, I guess. Frisbee, cakewalk. There's also going to be transportation available, especially for the elderly. We decided on a Saturday from 1 to 5 or 6 p.m. somewhere in that area, because Saturday seems to be when people's activities aren't quite as family oriented, so they're more apt to be going to something else that they would enjoy. And we figured on come with your ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and enthusiasm, so we could discuss and try and intermingle with the people that show up to get them involved in our neighborhood. And that was basically.
Okay, good job.
And then this says ways to work with West. Allow time for decision making, which is why it took us so long. Provide data, objective facts, and figures that can be trusted. Don't be put off by critical no statements. Minimize expression of emotion. Use logic. Appeal to tradition, sense of history, and correct procedures.
Okay. How does that fit for you guys? Pretty good. Yeah, some not. Yeah. So what did we notice about the West presentation? How was it different, similar to others?
Practical and listed at time. Just all day, just show up, whatever. Be here, right there.
Okay, they had the time listed. They thought through a lot of the details. Anything else you
It was
noticed?
really practical.
Yeah, it was very practical. I really noticed that you thought through a lot of, you kind of combined a lot of what the North and the South did. You put it all together. So you really thought through, I think, the whole process of how we're going to get people there. And plus you came up with time and detail and that sort of thing. So, you know, it seems like it's a real well-rounded, comprehensive kind of plan to me. So, any other comments about that one? Okay, great, thank you. So let's look at the east. The east are the visionaries. What do you guys know?
We wanted to have a bike and walking tour of a neighborhood that ended at an ice cream social. So people would walk through the neighborhood, and along the way we had different ideas of what could happen along the way. We'd create a map so that they could identify cool things in the neighborhood, history, maybe issues. We thought if there was a rundown park that needed attention, we could draw people's attention to it that way. And then we could also plant fun things along the way to find so that people could win a prize when they get to the ice cream social. They could be like a scavenger hunt idea. And we thought about providing self-guided tours with the maps, or led options with just people from the neighborhood who have different focuses. Like somebody who's into nature would kind of give a natural tour of the neighborhood, and someone who likes history could give a history one. And then we started thinking about when we were thinking about the different issues and the different things that they would find along the way, we came up with this good, bad, and the ugly theme. And therefore, we would have explainers at some of these points that could talk about history or talk about the issues, and they could be in costume, like in Western costumes, or it could be like cowboys talking about just different points of interest. And then we just talked about things that we would need to do in order to organize it and accomplish it. So it says get donated ice cream and tokens, and that we need to find servers and people to be at the end point. And we wanted to offer prizes from even neighborhood businesses or residents that own businesses, both for the people on the walking tour and the people who were creative during the walking tour. And then we just talked about that we would need to figure out publicity and donations and flyers and create a map. And what is this one? Share lessons learned with other neighbors. Oh, just with other neighborhoods. Oh, and then we were talking about that we could, because we all are from different neighborhoods in our groups, so then we were like, we should really do this and use each other as kind of a support for organizing within our own neighborhoods. So.
Wonderful. See what it says about how to work with the East.
Show appreciation and enthusiasm for ideas. Listen and be patient during idea generation. Avoid criticizing or judging ideas. Support divergent thinking. Provide variety of tasks. Provide support and supervision for detail. And follow through.
Okay. How does that kind of fit with you guys a little bit?
You notice we identified that we had to set up a time, but we never identified time.
We're like, we might need to think about it. Well, let's think about cowboys for a while.
It's a detail.
Boring.
Details. My husband and I always have that. He just not terrible details. Oh, that's just a detail pack. So what did you notice about this group in comparison to the rest of the presentations? What was different about this group? Very creative. Very creative.
And innovative.
Not that the other ideas weren't also very great ideas, but you know, they seem to come up with some ideas that aren't standard things that you kind of do, like, not that that's a bad thing, but, they really came up with some creative things. What else did you notice?
They talked about what they would need to do next.
Yeah,
To
they
actually
did.
get it done.
They did. Which is really good, so sometimes the East tend to just they just vomit all these great ideas, but they never really have a plan. So I really like the fact that you're kind of planning this too, so
Well,
that's
you
really
told us to plan, and that's what
Come with an idea, so we had to do it.
That's the other guy's problem.
That's right, and sometimes the East have the great ideas, but it's up to some of the other styles to say, okay, well, let's see what's practical, The West can help make what you're doing more practical so that it can be something that really can get done. Okay? So everybody, you can go sit down now. And if you refer to your handout one more time. Yeah, you can stay where you're at, because you'll be moving again in a few minutes.
Is it?
So what are the implications of what you just learned for working in your teams, in your neighborhoods? Pardon?
Let's hope you get a variety of people elected to leadership.
Okay. It really is great to have somebody from each of these directions on your team, definitely. But, in just having an awareness of what is your preferred style is so important, because, if somebody says, that is such a lousy idea, remember that they might be somebody that's analytical, and don't be put off by that first no, but instead just kind of keep talking about it. And for those people that are more analytical, be sure to remember that there are people with feelings, and they need to be reinforced. They need to be told that what they said was valuable and important. And so it's really important to kind of think through the emotional part of it, the feeling part, as well as the thinking part. And how does that fit together? And the people that see big picture, like the East, they kind of see the big picture, and the West kind of see the parts and the pieces, And so it's really important to be able to have a visionary, somebody who sees the big picture, as well as somebody who sees all the pieces and parts, so that they can bring the practicality to the vision.
You need a north too.
Pardon?
You need a north too, you've got us.
And the North, yes. And the North also see the big picture. The North see the big picture as well, but they're more the thinkers. They see, they're more logical, where the Souths are more the feelers, and they also see the details. So South see details, feelers. North see big picture, and they see big picture, and they're thinkers. The East are usually the big picture and the feelers, and the West are the details and the thinkers, if that makes any sense. So if you look on the last page, and I wish we could spend a lot more time on this, but we have several other activities. Balancing for success. So, and this is something you can all do when you're working in your groups. Be thinking, have we seen the vision? What are the possibilities for us? What are our possibilities? What could we do? Come up with all those possibilities. List them, brainstorm, be creative. And then you need to think about the relationships. How are these all of our ideas, how are they going to affect the people in our neighborhood? How can we get people involved? That sort of thing. And then processing. how are we going to do the project? What are all the individual pieces? What's the timeline? How are we going to make this really happen? And then finally, looking at results, which is what the North does. How well did we complete the project? Did we meet our goals? You know, were we effective? You know, kind of having a chance to evaluate what we did. But really seeing how each of these is really important to have a well-balanced and successful event. So, any questions or comments about this?
It's fun.
It was fun? Yeah.
I'm curious after I go through one of these that if anybody else feels like they were once a part of another group or anything like that, because I know like change is kind of like help, you know, not change people, but encourage other types of thought. But I've always felt very similar, and I was just wondering if any of you guys ever felt that maybe you were a little bit less whatever, or was this always directed?
I think I find a lot of myself in the West, but as I've grown comfortable with what I do for a living, I found myself moving towards the North a lot more. So, yeah, I could see that.
I'm kind of North by default because all the groups I've been in, it's, well, what do we do? We're getting fine, I'll be in charge. I don't want to be in charge, but, you know, I'll be in charge.
And you do it so well.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes I think life situations will help us really see our true potential. You know, if we get placed in a situation that challenges us or nurtures us, it might pull out some qualities we didn't really realize we possessed and might change the style that we're in. So, I know when you're doing Myers-Briggs, they say you're born with one type and you never really change, but sometimes life situations might make you more emotional, for instance, or make you more logical. But you're supposed to always stay one style.
See, I had some north and west.
Yeah, yeah.
But I went into the south because I am a nurturer.
Yeah, okay. Great. Well, the next piece I would like to do is actually part of Myers-Briggs, and it's the preference scale that looks at extrovert and introvert. And I think this is one of the most critical components of working with people, is learning some of the myths about being either extroverted or introverted, but also finding out skills on how to communicate with people on the opposite side that you are. And I think it's always interesting because people never really have a conversation about extrovert and introvert. And when you start having one, you just find new, fascinating things about each other that really helps you communicate and work better together. So what I'd like to do now, you do have a handout. It doesn't really follow my PowerPoint, but it's a reference for you later. And it kind of explains each of the Myers-Briggs pieces. But what I'm going to do right now is go over the extrovert and introvert. And I want you to think again which side you think you fall in. And we all have extrovert and introvert inside of us. It's just that one is more dominant or preferred than the other. So you're going to find both on each side, but you should be able to come up with one that you feel more comfortable with. Okay? Does that make sense? And really what is interesting about extrovert and introvert, it's not so much whether you're shy or you're outgoing, but it's about where you get your energy from. And extroverts get their energy from the outer world of people and things, and introverts get their energy from the inner world of thought and reflection. So that's the key, is where do you get your energy from? So extroverts feel pulled outward by external claims and conditions, and introverts feel pushed inward by external claims and intrusions. So external things sometimes for introverts pull them inward. They feel it's like it's an intrusion in their world, where extroverts really like that kind of thing. Extroverts are energized by other people and external experiences, and introverts are energized by inner resources and inner experiences. Extroverts act and then maybe reflect, and introverts reflect and then maybe act. Anybody just did something and thought, oh my goodness, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? And you just do it spontaneously. Anybody have one of those experiences?
Went to college.
Pardon?
Went to college.
Yeah. And oftentimes introverts, they reflect on something so long that they never get around to acting on it because the extroverts always take over and they never have a chance. The extroverts are often friendly, talkative, and easy to know, and introverts are often reserved, quiet, and hard to know. Extroverts express their thoughts and emotions freely, maybe at the risk of saying too much. Extroverts mentally process verbally. Have you ever known anybody that just talks and talks all the time and whatever is going on in their mind comes out their mouth? And that's the way extroverts process. And they can't really come to a conclusion until they can talk about it. Introverts keep their thoughts and emotions private, maybe at the risk of saying too little. Extroverts need relationships and introverts need privacy. Extroverts give breadth to life and introverts give depth to life. Many times extroverts will have a wide variety of friendships, relationships. Introverts will have fewer, but they'll be a lot deeper. Not that extroverts don't have deep relationships, they do. But introverts might have fewer, but those that they have are much deeper. Extroverts may seem shallow to introverts, and introverts may seem withdrawn to extroverts. So here's a few key words to describe the two, and I want you to think, do you fall more on the extrovert side or do you fall more on the introvert side? Just give you a minute. Yeah?
What if you're there's so many characteristics. I almost wouldn't evenly split. Is that possible or?
Well, most people, there's some people that fall very close, but think about where you get your energy from. Is it from people and things or inner thought and reflection? That's the key. Which is the strongest for you. And it's great if it's hard because that means you really are balanced between the two. Everybody decide where they fall. So what I'd like is for all the extroverts to come to this side of the room and all the introverts to go to that side. Extroverts here, introverts there. Yeah, that's not hard. You don't know what an eye is thinking, you haven't asked. I really like that one. And then another one, if it's important to extroverts, they will quickly show it. If it's important to introverts, they will often hide it, at least until they feel sure it will be treated with respect. I think that's a really important one to pay attention to. So what I'd like us to do now is we're going to have some conversations around extroverts and introverts. And in your groups, I want you to, and maybe we can split up into two groups so we have more interaction. I want you to think about what you really admire about the other group. So, extroverts, what do you really admire about the introverts? And introverts, what do you really admire about extroverts? What baffles you about the other group? What don't you just can't understand how they could do this or they could feel that way or whatever? What baffles you about them? And then finally, what questions do you have for the other group? This is your opportunity to ask some probing questions, all in the name of understanding. What could you possibly ask them to learn more about how they react or how they respond to things? Or how better to work with them. Okay? Does that make sense? So go ahead and split up into two groups and...
Can you go back to the slide so we can see that list?
Sure, you want me to?
Mind?
No. I think I can do it.
Are we supposed to write this down somewhere or just talk about it?
Yeah, you might want to write down some of, because we're going to be sharing it, so you want to write it down. I'll bring some paper around for it. Okay.
Are you saying
Anybody?
that two groups should split?
Yeah, you guys should split into two groups.
We like
so you have
that,
a
those
chance to
guys.
visit and do the same with this group. You guys just came.
Yeah, what's the extrovert?
I'll start.
Okay.
What we really admired about the introverts was that they think before they talk, and that they appear to have even emotions, and that they're thoughtful.
Okay. Do you find that to be true? Those things appear to be even emotions? People are all nodding.
Not necessarily.
I just was curious if that was true for everyone. Okay, great. Okay. What is the other group? What did you admire about the introverts?
That they kind of demand time to themselves. You know, I think a lot of times the introverts don't, or the extroverts aren't very good about taking time to reflect on things and take time for themselves. And just the depth to their thoughts. So.
Okay. Great. Extroverts. What do you admire about the introverts?
Introverts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Introverts. What do you admire about the extroverts? Sorry.
That you always know what to say in any situation. Your energy level is always so high. Good at bringing things up. Good at unifying, drawing people out. And your sociability. You're very sociable.
What about the other group? What did you come up with?
That they're quick thinking, they put people at ease quickly, that they're at ease with themselves around others, that their breadth or expansiveness, that they can draw energy from others, and that they fill up the space left by introverts.
Oh, so that was a little backhanded, wasn't it? So what baffles you? Let's start with you guys. What baffles you about the extroverts?
We just had one. They never seem to get tired.
You find that true?
It appears to be so. To a certain extent, anyway.
Anybody get tired? Definitely. I get tired.
Yeah, but not externally. They don't show it very
They
well.
don't show it. Okay. How about you guys?
Their lack of inclusiveness of others in conversation, and that they don't notice subtleties.
Those are so not true.
What's the second? What was the second?
What was the second one?
That extroverts don't notice subtleties.
Okay, so you guys agree with that? You do? Yes? Who said that's so not true?
I did. But I'm a midliner, so.
You're a midlife. You know, I really don't know if that's so much an extrovert quality as just a lack of awareness, you know, and I think what you're doing tonight is helping to create an awareness to help you maybe learn some more of those subtleties. So hopefully that will be helpful. Okay. So what baffled you about the introverts?
I'll go, not speaking up, and there doesn't ever seem to be any interaction. The extroverts are talking 90 miles a minute, and you guys are just sitting there going,
So do you find do you find we have interaction? I saw and heard a lot of interaction over here. during
It's
the
kind of
activity.
hard too when you're talking. I was saying my boyfriend talks for people that know him are laughing. And he never, and then he'll be like, well, why don't you ever say anything? Why don't you tell me how your day is? And what we came up with is they don't ask us. And if you don't ask us, and if you don't have a question in your conversation, we don't know when is the right time for us to step in there.
Yeah.
Or we just don't because
maybe it's not important enough of a conversation. Okay. That makes sense.
We had, again, why don't they speak up? And I guess for, us, we have to kind of draw our energy from being around a bunch of people. How is it, it's been so much all the time.
Anybody want to answer that?
It's so nice.
So what questions do you have? This is kind of a way we can dispel those myths or, ask these questions you
I just
have.
want to give an observation that I noticed that the entire half of this room seems to be really fidgety. And I look over there, everybody's just kind of
We have a good question. How best do we make our voice heard and listened to by extroverts?
Oh, that's a good question.
Speak up.
We talked about that a little bit, how we tend to expect people to be like us and to speak when they feel they have something important to say. And so when introverts don't, we just think they don't have something important to say. So it seems like extroverts need to ask questions like you were saying, and then introverts also have to realize that extroverts are very comfortable with people jumping in and just talking. Well, we kind of had the question of, how do you want to be drawn out? What are your trigger points? That kind of stuff. So I guess, how do y'all want to be drawn out? How can we include y'all?
And Marcia had an idea. Tell your idea.
I can't quite
Did you forget it? If they're in your group and you've got some issue or thing, the introvert could go and research it, and go in depth more with it. And I thought that's bringing them out. They could bring it back to you with whatever it was.
The idea was to make use of their tendency to be an introvert and make it positive. We had a question.
Okay, before we go on to that, I'd like to spend a little more time with this one because I think it's really an important one on how can we, and sometimes introverts feel a little bit put off by this, like, well, it makes it sound like we can't speak our mind on our own, that we have to have strategies to get our voices heard. But I think in some, there's some introverts that are stronger at having their voices heard than others. And I think it's really an important conversation to have, How can we make sure that everybody's voice is heard? What are some strategies that we can use?
You have a really good moderator.
Have a good moderator, yeah. That helps
So
a
you
lot.
look at sides, and if someone's monopolizing, and someone who hasn't said anything, you really give them the space to ask. And I always like to have the option of people who don't feel comfortable speaking, that you have a basket. So like if anything's overlooked or so a thought comes to someone later, they're encouraged to write it down and put it in the basket.
That's a great idea. That's a great
Because
idea.
then it encompasses all comfort levels.
That's a really good idea. Let's have it, then you can.
Well, and it's also not just the participation, like the active, like bringing up your thoughts, but we were talking about how listening isn't always agreeing or disagreeing, and how I disagree with that, but it's an NCBI thing. They have like this great statement. Is anybody
agree to disagree?
Well, it's
that silence doesn't really necessarily mean you disagree with what's going on.
Or agree. Or agree, I think is the better way of saying it. They say it a lot better in NCBI, but that just because someone is silent doesn't necessarily mean that they're going along with what's being talked about.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't mean that you have to be as well. Like, as an extrovert, that silence doesn't mean that you're necessarily agreeing with what's happening. It could just mean you're just listening.
Okay, that's a good point.
I've had an experience myself too, because I've been in situations with
sometimes where I seem like I'm the extrovert. And it's after asking a question or after having to make a statement, waiting an uncomfortably long time before saying anything more. An uncomfortably long time, which to other people is perfectly comfortable amount of time.
That is so true. How many of you agree you really have trouble with silence? Anybody over there? Oh yeah, extrovert. I know I'm an extrovert, and you know, to have 5 seconds of silence, oh my goodness, it seems like forever. But for you guys, it's like, give me 10 or 15 seconds of silence. Maybe I can get my thoughts together.
But I've found, and I've done a lot of meetings and stuff with my work, if you're in charge of a group and trying to get groups going, you always have to be watching out for who's talking and who's not. And if necessary, insert a question and say, well, what do you think about this? Or, you know, something like that to make sure that you get everybody heard. But if you're interacting just one-on-one or something, of course, my natural tendency is to blurt out everything I think and just keep going on until somebody stops me. But over the years, I've kind of had to learn that, you know, you got to say a piece and then you got to wait a while and see if there's going to be a reaction.
Right.
And sometimes it's, as you say, an uncomfortably long while.
Yes.
But it pays off.
Definitely.
And I think that's a good point. We can learn from each other. I mean, I think especially, again, over the years, since I am quite a talker, I've learned that sometimes people stop and they don't have to say something instantly. They sort of stop a minute and they think about what they're going to say, and then it comes out and it makes far more sense rather than kind of talking in circles like I have a tendency to do at least. But like Kathy said, I think you have to be aware of the people in your audience or in your group that haven't contributed anything and make a concerted effort to call them out.
Exactly. Yeah, as leaders, you really need to be conscious of that, you know, making sure everybody's voice is heard. Yeah.
I also think, you know, just because we're not saying anything, it's more about finding the right time or the right opportunity. Or for me, I might hear a lot of things that I might have something to say about, but if it's not something that really kind of is that fiery thing, or that I don't feel is really necessary for me to comment on, I just won't. But, so I don't know, I think some of it is just, yeah, taking a minute and pausing every now and then would be useful. Asking the question every now and then, well, what do you think? Or, you know, what would you say about that? Those kinds of things. And sometimes, honestly, I don't mind just listening. I mean, really, like, I like to listen. I like to do stuff and listen to what people are saying. And just because I don't say a lot doesn't mean that I'm not engaged. I just would rather listen a lot.
Well, do you find that sometimes you process a lot? And I find a lot of times in meetings, the most profound and well thought out statement that's ever made in a meeting is said by an introvert at the end of the meeting. Because, you know, they seem to be processing and thinking through and making sure that what they say is going to be, you know, really well structured and it's going to be a good idea. They don't want to just say something that's just, yeah.
I guess what I was saying is really related to what you're saying, but in maybe the hopes of if you had a situation where you identified someone as an introvert and you didn't know how to get their ideas out of them, or you felt that they weren't, you know, communicating with you, that it's actually kind of counterintuitive, but speaking with them one-on-one is 10 times more intimidating for them than speaking as a group. So, like, just sort of having like a regular one-on-one meeting is too intimate, I feel, and it's a lot easier to process information when you're listening and kind of gathering information collectively, because, at least for my style, I don't feel that I want to represent just myself, but I want to represent sort of like a consensus of what other people feel. And so when someone asks me really point blank, how do you feel, it's hard for me to like sum everything up, because it's just hard to do for myself. It's a lot easier to do with a group of like 2 or 3 people.
what do you feel about having, like agendas or ideas ahead of time to think through before you go to the meeting, so you've had a chance to kind of process what your own thoughts are about it? Is that helpful to any of you? Yes. How about for you guys?
I think it's important from both sides because it keeps us blabbers on track.
Yeah. Okay.
I also think it's really important to let each person, for example, on a leadership team express and have an opportunity to show their leadership style. Because if you have the same person who's moderating meetings all the time, depending on their style, especially if someone's considered really an extrovert, I think it really takes away from. Then that one person's expected all the time to deal with the majority of stuff because they're a talker, but I've just found in my personal experience, it's good to vary it. Unless you have someone who's extremely, introverted and shy that doesn't feel comfortable even looking at a piece of paper and talking, but it's something to keep in mind.
That's a good point too. Well, I think, any other comments?
Well, I was just going to say with the whole agenda thing is really good, and one thing that helps me a lot when I'm feeling that urge to jump in and talk when I know that that's going to dominate the situation is I just write everything. Like if I'm having an amazing idea, I write it down and just wait. Like I don't know, that's just been a really helpful tool for me in meetings because I always want to say it right now because you forget.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, just giving everybody an opportunity to sit and reflect for a few minutes and write their notes down before you start with discussion. Just say, okay, this is what we're going to be talking about. What are your thoughts and ideas? Write some notes down. And that gives everybody a chance to think about what they're thinking about it and then start a conversation. So that kind of helps the introverts have that reflection time and gives everybody a chance to think about it before you start the conversation. So I think we've had some really great ideas tonight about how, we can make sure that everybody's voice is heard. So other questions? Did you guys get a chance to ask them a question yet?
Yeah.
Okay, you had a question, didn't you?
We had a question, because we're always kind of known as the chatterboxes and, it seems like we talk forever. And sometimes people, kind of get on us because we do talk too much. We were wondering if the introverts ever get put down for being quiet.
Introverts get put down for being quiet just by anybody?
Yeah.
Or if it's seen as a negative, if they feel like it's been seen as a negative quality.
I think sometimes, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think sometimes it's easily to forget introverts because whether, if they're sitting through a meeting and they don't say anything, then you're just not going to remember them. Or like if they come 5 times, you're just going to just overlook them kind of. I think I don't know if it's being put down, it's just not as memorable because they're not speaking up. Yeah, not as visible.
I don't think I've ever seen it as a bad quality. I've never been told it's a bad quality.
Okay. Yeah.
Just noticing the differences in styles. The last meeting we had, when they said, brainstorm, tell us what you think. In my training, that means state everything that's on your mind, no matter how insane it is. And if we can filter it down to one good idea, that's fine. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I wonder if the introverts are thinking, is this guy insane? Where are all these things coming from? If you're the type of person who sits and thinks about something before you make a decision, you're wondering if, well, maybe I should join a group where we have more introverts because we think more.
What do you guys think?
There's 2 different aspects of that. One is, wow, that's a lot of ideas. That's really cool, right? The other part is, geez, which one of those is really going to work?
Well, if there's a time for, if the discussion is up for brainstorming or gathering new ideas, that's one thing, but like sometimes at a neighborhood council meeting, it's like, get to this and get to this and get to this. And at those times, it's like really inconvenient if someone someone is just sitting there and going off on all these tangents. And so there's a time and a place for everything. And so if it's a brainstorming type of meeting, or a brainstorming even like session of the meeting, or a section where you say, let's just get ideas. I love that. I don't think it's an introvert or an extrovert thing, but it's just being aware and respectful for the circumstance and the place of the conversation. So I definitely wouldn't hold back like your ideas. I would just like be communicating with people about when the ideas should come.
Well, you bring up a great point, because I know all of us, whether we're extrovert or introvert, have been in meetings where there's always somebody that dominates, who won't shut up, has got an answer for everything, and really kind of takes away from everybody else in the group. So I'm just curious what strategies you might have used in the past to maybe solve that problem.
Tell them it's time to give someone else a chance to talk. You know, well, we appreciate your thoughts, but let's give some other people here a chance to voice their opinions.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. Sometimes it's a combination of nonverbal cues, just kind of doing one of those, or just saying, like you say, let's hear from somebody else who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, those kinds of things.
I think it helps if you have delegate a person to be the tongue.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, to help out whoever's facilitating.
I like the parking lot. The parking lot. And that's just where, it's usually when you're really trying to focus on one thing and to get that one thing done. And there's a tendency for anybody, really, introverts and extroverts, to kind of want to take it out to a different area when you're trying to really focus in. So you can say, but we'll put that in the parking lot and we'll get to that later as we can. But right now we really need to focus on this, so does anybody else have anything that we can do pertaining to this specific thing? And it just helps really ground that. And then if you get done with that, and there's something related that could add well to the conversation, you can bring it out of the parking lot and then talk about it. So the parking lot is really just like a piece of paper. You can either write it down in front of you, or if you have a flow chart, you can write it on the flow chart. And that's useful, especially with large groups of people. And some neighborhood council meetings can get fairly big, so that's a good one to use. And I like the parking lot on the wall, because for big meetings, then you write it down and they see that you wrote their idea down, and they know it's up there, and then they won't usually repeat it again because they know that it's up there and waiting in the parking lot. So it's kind of a visual thing for visual people.
Well, is there one more burning question that either side would like to ask before we move on to another activity? Okay. Well, why don't we take just a few minutes for a break, because I'm sure you all could use one. And we'll get started back in like 5 minutes or so.
No. Do you want us to be?
Oh, well, if you'd like, for this last activity, you can join your neighborhood council, but you don't have to if you're comfortable where you're at now, that's fine. Well, the last piece that I would like to present tonight is on situational leadership. Anybody worked with that or know of situational leadership? A couple people, okay. I really like this theory. There's a ton of leadership theories out there, and I really like situational leadership because it helps us really look at individuals, and that's what we've kind of been doing tonight. Look at differences we have, things that we share in common, but if we can really kind of treat each person as an individual and use our leadership style in a way that empowers them and makes them successful, that's what we want to do, I think, all of us. And so I wanted to present the situational leadership model tonight. It's really very simplistic, but it really, I think, after I explain it to you, you'll see how it could be really useful to all of you. Can you all see this, by the way? Okay. Well, first of all, situational leadership was developed by a gentleman named Ken Blanchard. And I've known about it for a long time, used it with 4-H a lot because I worked with varied individuals who had either a lot of commitment, low commitment, they had a lot of skills they could bring to the table. So it really was helpful for me. It's really simple, but it's a very effective way to help volunteers work at their capacity. Because once we know where they're, if they have a high commitment or not, or what their task level is, we can really help them work at their full capacity and reach their own, reach their own goals as well. It provides strategies to meet volunteers' changing needs over time, because I really found, and I'm sure you'll find that, our volunteers ebb and flow as far as their commitment level. Something really, funky might be happening in their lives and their commitment level is going to plummet. Or you might have somebody that joins that has really high commitment level. And so, I find that volunteers over time change. And so it's really great if we can adapt to those changes. It also allows you to work on an individual basis, as I said, to provide a best fit that's going to work well with, helping you work together as a team. So let's just look at that. And there is a handout that you can read over later, because I'm sure you're not going to remember everything I say. And if this situation leadership really resonates with you, you might want to read up on it. So I gave you some handouts. So basically, it's very simple. You really look at what are the personal factors that are affecting a person's performance in a team or in a group. And it basically comes down to two things: commitment and competence or ability. So basically we have to look at a person's commitment, and that involves their confidence level. Do they feel really confident about being involved? Do they have some people just have a lot of confidence, and some people are really shy and they don't really feel that they can contribute, or they don't feel that they have the right skills or the right personality, so they're a lot more reluctant to get involved. They also might have low self-esteem, and so they don't really feel confident enough to really step up to the plate and do something. It also involves motivation. What's motivating that person to get involved? In neighborhood councils, think about what's motivating people. Well, they want a better neighborhood, like you talked about earlier tonight. You have some core values that you all share in common. You want a better neighborhood. One parent might want to be involved because they really want to find a safe way to get their kids to school. Another person might want to be involved because they see that there's some environmental things going on in their neighborhood that they want addressed. And so they have a real personal commitment to being involved. And so they're motivated for those reasons. Some people like to get involved because they want to influence and impact their neighborhood, or they just want to be involved for affiliation. They want to get to know other people. They might be new to the neighborhood, and this is a great way to get to know folks. So what really motivates the people that you're working with? And then finally, their willingness. The commitment really has to do with willingness, and your handout talks a lot about, are they willing or not willing to be involved? So how willing are they to be involved? And then finally, competence or ability is something you need to think about. What kind of knowledge do the folks that you're working with have for the task at hand? Think about what skills you need for your neighborhood council to be successful. You might need somebody who's great with media, that knows how to get press releases out, somebody that knows everybody in the neighborhood or has contacts with the school, or somebody that knows how to write a newsletter. Maybe you need somebody who's good at conducting meetings. We talked about that tonight and how important that is. So what are the skill sets that you need? And do the people that have the willingness to be involved have the competency? And if they don't, let's train them. How can we get them the competencies they need to be successful? So looking at these two pieces, we can come up with 4 different levels of readiness in folks that we work with. And this is in your handout. So the 4 levels are the unable, the people that are unable, and unwilling. So when we talk about unable, we mean people that are unable because they don't know the task. They don't know how to do it. So they're unable and they're unwilling. And I call these the disillusioned learners. These might be the people that have been on your council, they started up, and they were really excited at first. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is so much work. I had no idea what was involved with this. There's no way I can do this. I don't have the time. So they're just disillusioned, and they're really not willing, and their commitment is really low, and they really don't have the skills that are necessary either. The second one is the unable but willing. So these are what we call the enthusiastic beginners. These are the people that are coming in like, wow, I love neighborhood councils. They are so exciting. They're doing such great things. I want to do it. I really want to be involved. But they don't know the background. They don't know what really you're up to yet, what the mission of your council is. But they're really, really willing to get involved. But they might need some help in building their skills. Then the third group are the able but unwilling. These are the people that have lots of skills, but they're unwilling for whatever reason. We call them the reluctant contributors. And I'm sure you know a lot of those people. You know, you think, wow, if there was only a way I could get Jim involved in this council because, wow, he's so skilled at public speaking or so skilled at conducting meetings, but I know he's really, really busy, and he's like working 2 jobs right now, and he's got a family, and his kids are all in school and they're in sports, and how can we get that guy involved? Then the last one is called the able and willing. These are probably everybody in this room, we call them the peak performers. You're the people that have the skills and are also willing to do the job. And so looking at the 4 different levels of readiness, we can kind of start thinking, well, what's a good strategy that we can use to work with these folks to make sure that they're working at their capacity, they're feeling fulfilled, and they're feeling successful, and I can provide assistance to them. What can I do as a member of this council to provide assistance to them? And this is not in your handout, and it's really not as difficult as it looks, but there's basically 4 ways that we can work to help folks, depending on their readiness. There's delegating, participating, selling, and telling. And if you look at this, this graph was actually developed by Ken Blanchard. And it looks at the 2 things we provide to people are support and guidance. And support has to do with relationships, our relationship behavior with the people we work with. That includes things such as listening, encouraging them, facilitating, and providing emotional support. So that would be one of the sides of this graph. The other one is the task behavior. That has to do with our guidance. You know, telling people what to do, when to do it, how to do it, giving people direction. And it doesn't mean like in a bossy way, like micromanaging people, but it's in a guiding and supporting way. Because if somebody's coming in that has a lot of willingness, but they really are low in task behavior, we want to be able to give them the tools that they need to be successful. So whatever that might be, you know, here's a step-by-step process, or here's some information I have that might be helpful to help write a press release, whatever that might be. You want to provide guidance for those folks. So when you look at these, the delegating would be just turning over responsibility to somebody. If somebody has a really high willingness and also has a really high commitment, willingness, and a high ability, you don't want to be telling them what to do. You want to just say, you know, here's our goal. Here's what we're striving to do. Go out and do it, and tell me if you need some help. You know, they don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want to be told what to do. They're capable people. They just want to be left to do what they do best. And there's a million ways to get to the end result. Let them do it in the preferred style that they like. The participating style is for those folks like that probably don't have the commitment, but they might have the abilities. So we want to share ideas and facilitate in decision making with them. we want to participate with them and try to help build up their commitment and make them feel more involved and committed to what you're doing. So that would be participating. Selling is an area you would use when you have your enthusiastic beginners, the people that they have a lot of enthusiasm, but they don't quite know how to do it. So you want to explain decisions and provide opportunities for clarification. So you're kind of selling what you're doing and getting them excited. And then the telling are for those people that really don't have any commitment and they don't really have the abilities either. They're just kind of out there. They might be folks that you're trying to get involved for whatever reason. And so by telling them, you're providing some specific instruction and you're closely supervising their performance to make sure that if they are given a task, that they're completing it and things are happening and getting done the way they're supposed to. Okay. So what kinds of questions do you have about this? Or I know I kind of went over it really fast, and it really is a pretty simple thing to do. It's just kind of starting to think about what is the commitment level of the people I'm working with? What is their ability level? How can I best support that person? What can I do to help? And thinking about each person as an individual.
Okay, if you have the person that is in the telling mode, are you maybe doing them a favor if you visit with them and find out if they would really like to resign?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a mean way, but if they really don't want to contribute, and they don't, have any talents, maybe in some way you can offer them an out.
Yeah. I think that can be very appropriate. I've counseled people out of things before where they just, for whatever reason, they feel like they need to keep doing it. I remember there were some 4-H volunteers I'd worked with that had been involved forever. And, well, they did have talents, but their commitment was really, really low. And trying to find a way to encourage them, well, maybe it's time for you to move on to do something else that better fits what, your place in life or what you're doing right now. I think that's very appropriate. So, does that answer your question or your comment? Yeah.
I'm having difficulty sort of tying the two separate sort of pieces of information as I saw that you presented about the, unable and willing through the spectrum to the really high performers, competent people. In terms of relating them to this, in terms of direction or relationships or both?
Well, and I don't want to say that each of these should only be used for one particular readiness level. I don't think that's really, I don't think you want to get into that kind of a structured format where, this person is ready, not willing, but able, and so I'm going to use a delegating style or a directing style. I don't think, I want that to be what you do. Well, let's move back to this. What about this? Did you have trouble with this, or you're just trying to see how to put the two together? Okay.
I think being new to neighborhood councils and trying to help you guys out, I use situational leadership quite a bit to try to figure out how to get people re-involved or involved or more motivated towards different things. And I think in some neighborhood councils I've found people who are what you call the disillusioned learner, but they're not, it's not that they don't know what they're doing, they're just kind of done. But they're done for, what is the reason that they're done? And I found some that they were just done because they weren't getting any support from my office or from their neighborhood, or they just didn't know how to do it. Nobody has ever helped them. So I think a lot of giving that information, which is kind of telling, and then selling as well, that, you know, being involved and staying involved is useful. So I kind of looked at it that way. Also, the unable and willing are also kind of in that same area where you're kind of giving that information, selling them on staying involved, but also participating, getting their ideas and making sure that you're creating that relationship with them, so that they're also now more involved because they've given ideas and you're trying to figure out how to make it all work. And then able but unwilling is, in what way can they participate? In what way can they give? And I think that that's really a conversation of selling, once you figure out how they can participate, selling that to them and getting them passionate about that way that in which they can participate and give. And then able and willing, definitely teaching them how to sell it to other people. And so you're doing a teaching part there, but you're also doing the participating, and then, okay, what piece can you take? And will you go with that, and we'll meet up in a week and talk about it, kind of thing. So that's how I look at it, and I use it a lot in different stages and with where people are at. So I try to find out where they're at, if they're, you know, given the person where they're at, or given the group where they're at, and how to move forward. So, does that help, right?
Yeah, thanks. That was a good explanation. Somebody else had their hand up. Did anybody else have a comment or question?
I have a question about the graph.
Okay.
On the bottom, is that people who are unable, and on the right, or on the left, would be people who are willing? Is that right? Or?
Here?
Yes.
Yeah, this is willing.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is not willing. Well, let me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's sometimes better to just kind of go back to and simplify it as much as possible. I think you can kind of over-analyze it. And just really look at, you know, what is the commitment level? What's motivating people? How willing are they to get involved? What's their confidence level? And then looking at what their abilities are, you know, what to provide the task at hand. And then using that, just trying to figure out which of those 4 leadership styles, because all of us have one that probably we prefer. If you can think about it, which of those 4 leadership styles do you tend to gravitate toward? Do you tell? Are you selling? Do you delegate? Or do you participate? You know, one of those is probably going to be stronger for you. So really being able to look at what are the personal factors involved here, and which of those 4 styles would work best in this situation. You know, that's kind of what I want you to take away from this more than anything, is which style would work best. You know, and don't always just go to the style that you prefer, but think about which one would work best in this situation. Any other comments about that? Okay.
Are you done with this piece? Can I take close?
Would you like to?
I just wanted to make a kind of a reference to this and kind of some of the work that you guys do, and keeping this in your minds, and how it's going to relate to the training in April. And so, where's that chart at? That confuses everybody. which I'm like, oh, that's what I use. So one of the things I want you to think about, you know, it's really about, you know, when you approach somebody in your neighborhood and they want to be engaged, or maybe they don't, or maybe they're interested, but how do you gauge that? How do you find out exactly where they're at? And so say that you approach somebody, I approach Ray, he's really interested in his neighborhood, he's telling me about all these ideas that he has and everything, and I say, well, have you heard of the neighborhood council? Would you like to get involved? And Ray says, well, no, but I was thinking that I'd give those ideas to you. So then what I would want to do, instead of just being frustrated and be like, God, another person with great ideas that doesn't want to do anything, I would say, okay, this Ray guy has got something to offer, and I'm going to keep talking to him, I'm going to keep running into him, I'm going to keep, you know, And then I'm going to sell to him that he's got great ideas, that he's been participating in this conversation with me, and eventually I'm going to drag Ray in, and even if it's just for one event. Okay, Ray, you keep talking about this. This is really important to you. We just can't do it without you. And at this point, we've had like 5 or 6 conversations. He's like, okay, I'll do this one thing. Let's do it. And so we put it together and it happens. So those are the different ways to think about when you have those conversations with people. And then in the April training, we're going to talk about starting those conversations with people. So, and we're going to do community building. So how do you outreach and start those conversations with people? And then once you start them, analyzing in this scenario to figure out how to get them motivated to be involved. So, just kind of holding on to that, because we're actually going to do techniques and skills, different ways that you can listen to what your neighborhood needs. We're going to talk about listening surveys. We're going to talk about community assets and those kinds of things that you can utilize in your neighborhood to get people involved, which will then go right back into this spectrum here. So, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. So I guess just getting back this one more time. If you're delegating, you're not really you're not having to rely too much on relationship behavior or task behavior, because that person's real competent. And so you're just delegating, you're just giving it over to them. When you're participating, you're using a lot of relationship behavior. That's really important. Not so much the task, but you're just trying to, get those people in, just like Lynette was just saying. How can I get those people to participate? And so you're working with them closely and you're building relationship. And then when you're over here and selling, it's about relationship and it's also about task, because you're trying to sell what you're doing, you're trying to teach them how to do it, show them the importance of what you're doing and that sort of thing. And then when you're telling, you're just really focused on the task. You don't really care so much about the relationship as you do about making sure that some specific thing gets done. So, okay. So now that everybody's just about asleep, we're going to do one final activity to kind of pull all this together. You'll find on your table, except this table, still needs one, some paper. I would like you to think about one thing, the most important thing you learned tonight that you can take forward into your council and write it on the front of a sheet of paper. Each of you can have one. What's the most important thing you learned tonight that you will use with your neighborhood council in the future?
It's not my table.
Is this personal or is this a sharing?
You're going to be sharing it, but nobody's going to know that it's your note, if that helps.
Is it? Yeah, that's why I'm going to hold on to your shirt.
Activity. Then I know you're all done. So,
What was the question?
the question was, I want you to write down the one thing that you took, the most important thing you learned tonight that you will take forward and use in your neighborhood council. So when you're finished, stand up, please, and I'll know that we're almost ready to move to the next step of this activity. So all of you need to kind of gather toward the center a little bit. And I'm going to ask you to just start switching sheets. I want them all to be mixed up so nobody knows where the sheet came from. Start mixing them up.
See if everyone looks up. Feel like a night.
Okay, does everybody have one now?
Yeah, someone has to. Someone didn't write one.
Someone over there has two.
No, sheets. Everybody got one sheet now? Oh, here's
No,
somebody
no.
with two.
He's got
Ray has two.
Yeah.
Okay, too many ideas going on. Okay, so now listen, this isn't complicated, but you need to listen. What I'm gonna do next, we're gonna go through 5 rounds, and I want you to get with a partner. And they're gonna be different partners each time. I want you to compare your, whatever your idea is on your paper. And I want you, there's 7 points. So between the two of you, you need to decide which idea you think is the best idea and assign points. So you might give the best idea 4 points and the idea that isn't quite as good 3 points, whatever. But you need to assign points to the 2 ideas. And then write the point, the number on the back. And
So
we're gonna
7
do
being high and 1 being low.
Yes, and so between the two, you need a sign, split, you're splitting up the 7 points between the 2 ideas, okay? You're splitting the points.
That's not the entire net, it's just like,
Zero and 7, 1 and 6, whatever, okay? So find a partner and share your ideas, and I'll give you a minute to do this. Okay, switch please.
Are you partnerless?
I am partnerless. The importance of asking introverts questions to provoke discussion.
I need a partner.
35 points on an idea. 35 points. How about 34? Anything above 30? How about anything above 25 points? How about anything above 20 points? Okay, let's hear them. Let's start here.
Recognition of leadership styles and applying them in the delegation of tasks and leadership.
Okay.
How to work with people and personalities.
Okay. One other one?
Different people with their different personalities, commitment levels, and competence can be utilized more fully by using situational leadership.
Wow. Okay, that kind of took it. Yeah.
Understanding the different leadership styles and the importance of having diversity for the leadership team.
Okay. Any other?
Recruit leadership team members from all around the compass.
Okay.
The importance of asking introverts questions to provoke discussion.
Okay, great. So that was above 20?
It was 21 and a half. So
21 and a half. Great. Let's do 15. Anybody have 15 or above? Okay. What was yours?
Better understanding of the extroverts and their behavior.
Okay.
So that was like opposite of this.
Pay attention to the thoughts of others involved in the council.
Okay.
This one has 15.
Okay, just, we'll do him and then we can do you.
And Blanchard's readiness level to work with leaders and neighborhood volunteers.
Okay, great.
There are ways to listen and be accepting of everyone and his or her ideas, and a way to use everyone. Listen, listen.
Okay, great. Anybody else over here? 15? Okay. Well, I think that these were really, good key concepts that you can come away with tonight. And I just want to leave you with one more thing, and then I'll let you do your evaluations. But I think that these are the skills that I would like you to go away with tonight to be successful. Assess. Use your individual needs to provide direction and support. So assess the people you're working with and use their individual needs to provide support to them to be successful. Intentionality. Deliberately choose a style for a situation. Figure out what leadership style is going to work, what supervision style will work, and use that in a particular situation. Adaptability. Use a variety of supervision skills. Use a variety of Ken Blanchard's leadership skills to help people be successful. And finally, partnering for performance. Knowing what you need from each other to be successful. And that goes back to the conversation. All of this stuff should never replace having a conversation with somebody about what are your needs, how can we best work together, those sorts of things. I think that's really important. So thank you so much. This has really been a fun night. I always love working with adult learners. They're just, you really, get into things and take things seriously. I really appreciate it. I've had a great evening, and I wish you all well with your neighborhood councils. So thank you. If
you just want to fill out your yellow evaluation and stick it on this table, we'll collect them. And again, if you could get anybody who's able to help put away chairs and tables, we really appreciate it. And thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here.